fits together and how they're going to wild the walls and the general feel of what we want in the set.
With the chalet itself, I have to keep in mind the fact that it will be built here to begin with, and then I'll be moving it from this building to another building on this complex here, and I'm putting it back together. So what I have to think about is the best method to construct this building so that I can come along later and disassemble it, because it will move from this building to the studio where the interior will be filmed. It will then be taken from that studio once they've finished filming there and erected on a location. You want an update on where we are?
Yeah, when do you think you'll be able to move it to the studio? And
Right, okay.
And once you move it, how long do you think it's going to take to reassemble it?
I figure about 2 to 3 days for most of it.
Right.
Like for 90% of it. And then, as you know, we'll be doing all the little detailing over there, or more of it over there.
So all the painting will be done before it moves?
I would say 90% of it, yeah.
Okay. So it's just a matter of touching up and maybe the final aging.
All the tying in stuff over there, yeah.
Right.
Having a chalet as a major set was understood from the beginning of the production, and we gradually began to realize that we didn't have the budget to make a completely separate structure that would be a workshop. The idea then was to use the chalet for several different purposes. One was on a set, as a set inside a studio, to be this workshop, a sort of a strange place where people operate on these pods and fix them and so on. And then the exact same set with redressed became the guest chalet, which was where many of the important scenes between the two main characters happen as they are hiding out in this chalet. And then that same chalet was actually physically dismantled and taken out of the studio and placed on the actual ski hill, which we then could burn, and which had to be destroyed as part of the narrative of the film.
A couple of things happen in the chalet. We have a scene inside the chalet where we have explosion happens outside the chalet, windows blow up from inside, our actors are inside, and we have a Molotov cocktail come in through a window and fire starts. So we have to construct a chalet that makes sense with the blocking, so we have the windows in the right place. We also have to consider what we can double, what we can't double with the fire. Again, we've got some budgetary problems to overcome, so we can't just burn things and replace 10, 15 different things. We really have to be creative. And once we lock down what we want as far as what windows, we have to really stick to it. So the beds are here, right? These windows blow, which, you know,
now are we talking about when our actors are running by?
No.
We're talking about the original windows.
Right. This is
when
our chalet's out here, that explodes.
Right.
Forces this to explode.
Right, okay.
This blows in.
Right.
And then the Molotov cocktail would come in. These are windows here or here. And then you want the Molotov cocktail to come in from the same.
Maybe it should come through there, break this window, hit the bed. By that time, we'll move them away from the bed so that.
Right.
Everybody out now! This way! Come on! Follow me! This way, come on! Up here!
So we have have to prepare for a burn sequence?
Well, it's on the bed. It will fly. What it would happen? It's going to happen. It'll be on the bed. It'll get shot with the gun, and as it's shot, it sort of bounces along, and as it's bouncing along, it almost disintegrates, and all the innards of the pod fly everywhere. So we've got to be prepared to either clean off the headboard or replace it. And we'll do some tests and see how well it cleans. It's not blood, so there are no food dyes in it. But it's all natural. And then we have to prepare for the fire too, for at least 3 takes when that Molotov cocktail lands on the bed and the bed catches on fire. So we could need a possibility of 6 headboards or inserts of the grass cloth.
Like actual panels that
Just
insert?
panels that will insert.
So I need to provide an estimate, and then we'll make a decision after that. Huh? All right.
I know that if Carol comes to me with a budget problem, then it's a serious problem, because otherwise it's invisible. I don't know the machinations and workings. I mean, she really runs her department well and invisibly. And for a director, that's a gift. I don't want to know. I don't want to be involved in that unless there really is something that's going to bite me on the set, something that I thought should be there, would be there, and it's not there. Well, that never happens with Carol. I mean, she'll never let that happen, you know. And just in terms of how she eases me onto the set when it's just being built, when maybe there's not a lot to see, but she forces me to try and visualize things and anticipate things. Because I'm often reluctant to do that. You know, I'm being abstract and she's wanting me to be concrete. And I'm not wanting to be concrete because as soon as I say it's blue, then it's never going to be yellow. And I maybe don't want to make that decision yet.
Two possibilities for this staircase. This is an old one, and it's really heavy-duty cast iron.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And then there's another one that's a little, it's thinner and not as, you know,
It's exactly like your model. How did you do that?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We're on target. We're where we should be. And we're now preparing for camera. And camera will be on this, I think, in about a week from now. The fact that this ceiling is so low has been the biggest problem all around, because our sets are about 20 feet high, the 2 main sets, and the ceiling in here is like 22 feet high. So it's like squeezing it into a sardine can, you know?
And if you learn it,
I could give you probably 2 feet more.
anything will help.
Yeah. I'll talk to David about the mezzanine at the back. Peter lights sets in a way that he paints light on the walls. I mean, he makes my sets look incredible. So I have to try and do the best I can for him. Unfortunately, this one has been a little hard because of our studio space. Do you think if we took it to
I think that would be a great help, yes.
then maybe we might see a little more outside it. So maybe if I put some trees, branches, and some trees out there. It was a budgetary decision that was made at the beginning of the film to shoot in a warehouse and not a studio space. And we're having to deal with it now. It doesn't have the amenities that a studio would have. It doesn't have a grid for lighting. It doesn't have grids for us to hang sets from. It has a ceiling that is way too low and is covered with ducts and pipes and all kinds of obstacles that are in the way. It's the biggest challenge is for the director of photography, for Peter, because he just hasn't the room to light. There isn't the space that he requires.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure here, where we are, is real at all. This feels like a game to me. And you're beginning to feel a bit like a game character.
This set is a game manufacturing company that has moved into an abandoned ski resort. So it's sort of, we're taking it and layering our story on top of the vestiges of what it used to be, which was a ski resort. So this would have been one of the guest chalets. And it was probably a popular resort sometime in the late 60s, early 70s. So we're trying to put it back into that period, make it a little down, it looks a little shabby, it's tired, it looks abandoned. It's a difficult set because it's so spare. And you look at it and immediately, because our job is details, immediately go, oh, it needs personal. It looks impersonal. But then you have to let go of that and realize, yes, it's a guest chalet. It is a public space. It doesn't have any of those personal details. So this is where her design really shines more than my work in a set like this, because the architecture has to make the statement as opposed to the set dressing. The set dressing is just sort of taking the edge off, the empty room.
Yeah.
It would be impossible for Carol to visualize every little ashtray on a set or what book they're going to have. So basically, as the set decorator and my team, we come in and we try to flesh out down to the tiniest little detail. It hasn't been that complicated in terms of decorating, except that we've had to find multiples on things, which immediately, when you're dealing with something from the 60s, it limits what you can use. Because we're having the explosions in through the windows, there's fire, there's all these different sort of special effects elements that are going to affect our work. I had to find 30 bedspreads. We had to build the beds. We had to find chairs that were easily replicable. I've had to build some of the lamps we couldn't find in duplicate, so we're going to kind of have to build them to match. Not perfect matches, but enough so that the camera, when it's blowing them up, they'll look the same to our eyes. So that was sort of the main limitation, that in an already limited field, you were limited by the complications of special effects.
I think we just lost the game. Or maybe not.
We don't really have many studios in Toronto that are actual studios, and those studio spaces get filled up very quickly, and then suddenly people find that they're shooting in abandoned warehouses, they're shooting in the strangest kinds of places. And I'd never shot at a demilitarized Air Force base before, but that's what it was that we were shooting at. So it had all kinds of buildings that had been specific to building aircraft and administrating them and so on. And one of the things that we found was just a section of a building that we had assigned for wardrobe use. But I found myself coming and taking photos of various parts of it, just the way the pipes were and the textures on the walls, because these buildings had been much used and had a real patina of use and age that was very exciting, almost like a location, we start to think. And then we start to think, we could go somewhere else and find something that we can turn into this Chinese restaurant. We weren't going to find a Chinese restaurant itself that would work, because we had in mind, and once again, this is one of those cross-references, when we had all gone to China to shoot M. Butterfly, and we're in Beijing, we had all experienced, Carol and I and Peter Sushiski, the true Chinese restaurant in China, in Beijing, in northern Mandarin. And that's the kind of restaurant I had in mind when I wrote the script. And suddenly we started to look at this location. Well, it wasn't a location, it was our wardrobe department, but it started to look a lot like a location to us.
And so when I told David, I told him that, well, he had to go and tell his sister, who was designing the costumes, that we were going to take over her wardrobe area. Of course, I was the one that had to tell her. But she was very accommodating. She's been very good about it. I have several books of China that I used as reference, again, for M. Butterfly, and 3 of them are cookbooks with beautiful photographs in them of cooking areas, people cooking on the street. So it's the texture, I think, of those photographs that I'm taking, and trying to make those, apply that texture into this restaurant.
The blocks we already drilled a hole in, we'll probably use here for the steam and stuff. And then we'll find two of these, we'll rig for steam, and then we'll have one that the chef can actually be cooking in.
It's a very kind of country, very textured, lots of sort of crumbling plaster, cages with animals. It's a place like in China, if you were to go into this restaurant, you would choose your chicken or choose your snake, and they would cook it for you. That's the feel that we were trying to go for in this restaurant.
You want to put the tree in there?
Yeah, bring the tree over a little bit, and then maybe age it down a little bit so that there's some more. It actually is to here. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, maybe that would do it. That would do it. The hardest thing working with David is not knowing what's going to happen on the day you shoot. You just never know. You have to be prepared for everything. You have to build a set that's 360 degrees. He works so closely with his actors that, and on the day that when he rehearses, anything could happen. I mean, you can't build a two-wall set because the actors might decide they want to be on the other side of the room.
Are we can go? Yep. Yeah. Stand by, please. Here we go, everyone. Action!
Not only is the Chinese restaurant many people's favorite scene or series of scenes in the movie, but it's certainly one of our favorite sets in terms of just the feel and the texture and the lighting and so on. Everybody loves that set.
We have nice sea bass today. Shall I bring it for everyone?
We want a special.
We saw many, many photos out in the countryside of things that we were kind of limping along, kind of trying to make ourselves get excited about it, but nothing was really doing it. Meanwhile, each day I was driving past this fantastic Quonset hut, which was being used to store salt and some tractors, and they used them to clear the runways during the winter. And but what was extraordinary about it was that it had a real structure of laminated wooden ribs and so on, which is very unusual for a Quonset hut, because usually the exterior steel plates are the structure. That's what they're for. And I was driving past this every day, and then I found myself taking photographs of it, and then I thought, you know, this is the trout farm. I mean, this has got to be the trout farm.
Filmmaking is such a collaborative effort that I think that the more people can give their input, the better. Everybody on my team, I would like to have them put as much influence and input into it as possible. I mean, I'm not a magician and I'm not a creative genius, and I think that you're going to have a better final product if you can have as much input as possible.
I was thinking of the positioning of these three tanks here. We can bring them closer together. This is at 3 feet now, which leaves 12 feet there.
Yeah. Well, if we can maintain the 60 feet, I think we should, especially for renting the I-beams. Because
Carol worked out basically the elements that she wants to see in the set, and then it's a matter of kind of fine-tuning that. There, and we'll put the 6 here. This is a half-inch scale model of the trout farm, where in the game, Pikel, one of the main characters, winds up finding himself on an assembly line. And this was formerly a trout farm. So that's what the reference of these circular retainer walls are here. So what we'll have is stagnant water with all kinds of growth and interesting things still visible in the pools. So what happens here is he finds himself at one of these tables and ends up taking kind of reptilian innards that are coming down the line, and he puts them into what they call a motherboard, and then that goes down to a basket, and those elements are then taken back to what these are formerly horse stalls, and now we have operating tables set up where they actually put these innards into the pods themselves to complete the process.
My job is to end up loving everything in the movie, as far as I'm concerned. Loving it because it is what I want, and that it's worked out the way that I want. So there were many discussions. It's a very complex set, and Carol's work is absolutely brilliant in that set. It's so real and yet so fantastically evocative and not real. It was more, it was everything that I had imagined on paper and more. What happens is, on paper, I begin to imagine it, but then I continue to imagine it while we're making the film. It's an accumulation of many details and possibilities, and these things are all collaborations brought by many people, props people, costuming, everything comes together. And so, therefore, it is beyond what I had initially imagined it, which was just the instigation of an imagination, really. And the trout farm is, it's a magnificent set and a magnificent texture and tone and feel in the film. It's fantastic.
The game store originally went through several phases. We were going to build it as a set, and then again, to save some money, we decided that we were going to build it within the complex here where we're shooting. I did a tour through the whole complex and chose a space that I liked, that I thought that had some interesting elements to start with that we could use.
One of the things I've been in particular working with is this game store, and trying to find a look with Carol and the director and the decorators of what it should be. Is it just a junky variety store, or is it something that's sleeker, simpler? And because we have to produce a lot of packaging, and I'm starting to think about that, it's kind of like, David's asked for something that's beyond digital, so part of it is trying to figure out what exactly he means by that, what's beyond digital. Is it this new technology that we have within the film, which is this organic pod, and how to relate that to the screen.